Why October 2023? Why is this the time that they chose? And I found some very, very interesting pieces of information.
Israel's red heifers are coming of age this month, October. Israel and Saudi Arabia were negotiating a peace deal that could have become the covenant with the many. It appears all those things are on hold now as of October 7th, what happened on October 7th. In fact, we have seen a statement from Hamas that stopping those two things was the primary motivation they had for launching their terrorist attack. If October 7th hadn't happened, it is likely a red heifer might have already been sacrificed, and that at least a peace agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel would have been signed this month. If not for October 7th, we would have likely been having a very different set of discussions at the end of this month. And in fact, it's our opinion that the events of that day were so horrific in order to force Israel to take decisive action. And then once they did, the prophetic things we mentioned would have to be put on hold, maybe indefinitely. This was likely Iran's plan, carried out through its proxy Hamas. They knew they had to act before October was over, or there would have been a red heifer and a peace deal. So they did. And to some extent, their plan has worked. We know that the peace deal is now on hold. On October 15th, U.S. Secretary Anthony Blinken met with MBS, who told Blinken it was on hold in no uncertain terms. We don't know if the red heifer sacrifice is on hold, but given the events swirling around the Middle East, we can imagine it could not take place on the Mount of Olives at this time. If things were stirred up, as they were, imagine what would happen if the red heifer was sacrificed. It would just put things over the top. Last week, I spoke with Israeli pastor Howard Bass about all these things. Howard has a congregation, Yeshua's Inheritance, only 20 miles from the Gaza border. He is definitely an expert to talk about with these type of things, so let's listen to our conversation.
Why October 2023? Why is this the time that they chose? And I found some very, very interesting pieces of information. In fact, I'm going to give a little shout out here to one of our viewers, Jessica Warren, who found a statement from Hamas about, what this whole incursion was about. And you're going to faint. You're just going to drop over. The red heifer is directly involved. So they've called this the Alaska Storm, the Alaska Mosque that they have on the Temple Mount. And they're saying they're fighting to protect the Alaska Mosque. And the Hamas statement said they were fighting to protect it against the sound of the shofar and against the sprinkling of the blood of a red cow. So they are very aware, just like we are, that there are these heifers in Israel. And on my channel, we've been, now the rabbis are always talking about the spring that maybe at Passover they'll do a sacrifice, but the actual age of the cows that are still kosher, and we don't know how many are. They're very quiet about this. Those cows are of age in October. So that was one factor in them coming out. The second factor, of course, is what was going on between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. So with one incursion, one day of terrorist activity, Hamas has potentially put a stop to the red heifer sacrifice that would have probably taken place within the next couple of weeks. And, that would just change everything dynamically, and also have halted the talks, the peace talks. So why don't we talk about that a little bit? Let's talk about heifers first, and Saudi Arabia second. In terms of the heifers, neither you or I are rabbis, and I don't think we can say this. They're being kept at Shiloh, and that was a site where the tabernacle was at one time. Although there is no temple, so the prescription is that they are to sprinkle the blood toward the temple, and they have land that is on the Mount of Olives so that they can look down to where the temple used to be and sprinkle the blood. But do you think that given this activity, will they delay the sacrifice of the heifer, or will they actually do it in Shiloh because the Ark of the Covenant used to be there? So are they going to try to create less? They could do it there and no one would know it even happened. If they do it on the Mount of Olives, people are really going to be, if they were stirred up by just talk of doing it, imagine the stir up when, from other nations and stuff, if they actually do it. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I don't know the timing, exactly of when they will, or if they think they have to do it, let's say on a certain date.
They don't. I don't believe they believe that they have to do it when the heifers are 2 years and 1 day old, and before they are 3 years and 1 day old. That's the understanding that I have. Again, I'm not a rabbi, but from my study, that's going to happen sometime in October, that they will cross that threshold.
So assuming they can even do that and then hold it, right? They might not start sacrifices right away, but they've got the heifer and its ashes.
Yes. So once they have the ashes, they sacrifice it, they get the ashes, they mix it with spring water. I'm sure they were planning a ceremony where they'd bring it up from the pool of Siloam. Yeah, and they would bring the water up. They were probably planning a big deal, but now, you could see how in the current political environment, war environment, that becomes very difficult.
Sure, and it's also an emotional issue anyway. A lot of people, as of now, most of the world would oppose that in any case. For what Israel, for what prophecy says is going to happen, most of the world is going to do what it can to show its disgust even of it, not to mention its opposition to it, including many Christians and many Jews, because they don't understand. But I do think, God begins things in the dark and he brings them to light. So it could be, as you say, this sprinkling of the ashes, meaning having to sacrifice also the heifer to get its ashes and all that. It could be done without a lot of fanfare, but it's been done, and maybe not too many people know about it. When Yeshua was born, very few people were aware of it. So they could sacrifice this at a time because they feel if there's a time limit, they have to do it within a certain amount of time to do it, because it needs to be done, but not make a big publicity stunt out of it.
Now, a lot of you are probably saying, Nelson, don't you have contacts at the Temple Institute over in Israel? Can't you find out for us what's going on? Well, Fisherman does have a contact, a really good contact. But the red heifer is just so important. I mean, if this one is sacrificed, it'll be the only one in 2,000 years. There is no way they're going to let us or anyone else know what's happening. Even prior to the attack, the rabbis were deceiving the world on when the sacrifice would happen, saying it was going to happen in the spring. And now, in a state of war, there is just no way that they'll let us know. Perhaps after the war is over, they'll announce that they've already sacrificed the heifer, like we've been discussing today, but that's only my best guess. Like Howard said, sometimes what God does, he starts in the dark.
The other thing is even the agreement, whatever it is, the agreement that Daniel speaks about, a treaty, a covenant, one that's already made, could also be confirmed or strengthened or whatever without the world knowing about it, behind closed doors, amongst world powers.
It doesn't say that it is in front of anyone, but it also is possible that it is. There's on our channel, we are expecting Israel to divide its land.
Okay, well, this war could actually accelerate that.
Yes, it could. Yes, it could.
God
could well be part of it.
God keeps his schedule. He does things in ways we didn't think that's how he would do it. But this war, I'm thinking, I do believe Israel will have a certain advantage when the war is over, but not a decisive victory. Because the only decisive victory is when Yeshua returns. And he will put away evil and evildoers. So until then, Israel is always going to have this thing, but they're willing to make a pact with the devil, which is what this covenant of death, we'll say, is actually for peace. They don't want to keep fighting. They don't want to keep fighting, but the enemy is glad about that, because the enemy says, well, we are not tired of fighting, and we'll fight you when we think we've got you. If it's not now, we'll wait 3.5 years. You know what I mean? We'll do it when our time comes. But we are not giving up on destroying you.
I think this is a really good point that Howard's making here, that this war could actually be the spark that lights the covenant with the many. From our opinion, the UN is looking for an excuse to be able to make this worldwide covenant a reality. What could be a better incentive than putting an end to things like what just happened? I can really see that happening.
So I do believe we're near this time of this covenant issue, whatever that exactly means or not, different interpretations, of course, and the sacrifices, which I believe will be within the first 3.5 years, ending towards the end of the 3.5 years, because it seems like the Antichrist commits the abomination of desolation soon after he makes them stop. But so they'll start sometime, I believe, after the beginning, and to get them through until whatever the time is to stop them. But that time is very near. I do believe personally, as you do, I know, I think, Yeshua will come back in my generation. I might die today, but my generation is still here.
Yes, right.
And I'm 73 years old. Okay, so I do believe my generation, though, is going to see him.
Yeah, I think it's 76. I think Israel became a nation 76 years ago. And if you're a believer that is the fig tree that Jesus was referring to, sprouting leaves again, then anyone who is 76 years of age saw the fig tree sprouting leaves. So
yeah, and blossom. It's blossoming, but the fruit of it is not what the Lord wants. It's not fruit He wants. But the tree is very magnificent, and people say it's a miracle, right?
Yes.
Israel today as a prospering nation.
It is a miracle. It's wonderful. My understanding is that the olive tree is righteous Israel, and the fig tree is unrighteous Israel. So, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. The fig tree is national Israel. I mean, Israel in the land, righteous or unrighteous, and we know from the Bible we are unrighteous. But it's Israel again in the land.
Yes.
So the reestablishment is a Noah's Ark event for me. It's an event for me that's like Noah's Ark was. And no one listened to Noah, and very few people, including believers, are listening to what God is doing by reestablishing Israel and leading to judgment, leading to the return of the Lord and the day of the Lord and his righteous judgments, just like at the time of Noah and the flood.
And his protection of his own. So that's going to be, a great event that happens. So let me ask you one more question about end times. The other thing I want to ask about end times is the last time we talked, and I'm gathering that it has not changed, but the last time we talked, people in not only throughout Israel, but even some in your congregation are not end time aware. They're looking for either the Heifers or they're looking for the rebuilding of a temple, and then they'll think the end times are here. This war with Hamas is not moving them along that path, and they're not seeing this as an end time related event, are they?
I haven't heard that yet. I mean, it's very short period of time right now. I mean, I know there are some prophetic voices in Israel who are aware of the times that we're living in, but in the congregation, we're trying to get them to understand that we are in the end times of the last days. But it's amazing when I talk to people, even people I'm in contact with, let's say from overseas. Sometimes when they're writing me, it's as if they'd never heard any of this. Despite reading, let's say, my newsletters, or despite reading other people's, despite all that they can know and from reading the Bible, it's like they've never heard it before. When you hear them make certain comments, it's remarkable. And it's part of the deception, I suppose. We're so ingrained with a certain mindset about something, it's hard to be set free by the truth. And so you continue being inconsistent, and many people continue to say, and even in our own congregation, nobody knows. Because if you speak about the red heifers or a temple or things like that, they'll say, well, nobody knows. Because if you know that is near, then you know the return of the Lord is near. If you're thinking, well, nobody knows when he's coming, I've even heard, one tell me recently, it could be another 500 years. I mean, it's like, there's no biblical understanding, and there's no crying out to him, come Lord Jesus. And that's the last prayer of the Bible. And
which of course is, what all of us should be crying right now, because,
exactly.
These are horrible events that are happening. And
exactly.
The only way they end is when he shows in glory in the sky and puts an end to all this.
Right.
Jesus puts an end to it. There's no other way. Right.
Because people are not capable of it. And also morally, we have no authority to put an end to it. We're all sinners. Yes. And so he himself has to come, like when he sent his right arm to accomplish salvation, because he couldn't find any righteous people who could do it anyway, which aren't any. So he said, so I do it. I'm doing it. My own right arm will do it.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the same thing with putting away evil. So it's going to be very bad. I mean, I do remind people a lot of times, Jesus said, if he doesn't come back, no one is left alive. That's pretty bad.
Yes.
So when do we cry out, okay, Lord, in the meantime, this is what's happening, this is what I'm doing, but come, you need to come. So please come. But in the meantime, these things have to happen. These horrible things have to happen. This is what you've given me to do until I'm done. But come, Lord, that would be unity. So this is what I say to our congregation when we have elections. Vote for who you think, you vote. You have your free will to vote. But say, come, Lord Jesus, at the same time.
That's a great statement. That's just a great statement.
Now we know one day soon, all the nations are going to get together and conspire against God and against his Messiah. Will that conspiring be the covenant? Click right here to keep watching and discover what is the most crucial scripture about this, one that's even quoted at the seventh trumpet. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.